Like, I grew up in that world, and so my understanding of freedom is very intellectual. Like, your mind is free even if you are not.
Right.
We now bring you
The Violators, with an all-new AI pirated message designed to bypass the pusillanimous, goalpost-shifting algorithm used by moderators.
This is the censorship episode, which is probably the end of our Enter the Freud podcast. This should probably be our last one.
Yep.
And it'll make sense as we go along why. What's your thoughts about this idea? Because we don't really call it censorship here in America. Censorship, internet censorship applies to North Korea and China and a bunch of other countries like that.
Right.
Iran.
Right. I just don't get how the hell we're saying anything that's against anyone's corporate interest, you know. I just think that their default is to censor anything remotely on the edge, and I think that's their default, and then maybe they'll let some people through. It's confusing to me. I watched tons of like finance, economics, and crypto videos and people, and it's all just these small little dudes in their living room talking about finance or crypto or whatever.
This podcast is for entertainment only and not intended for medical purposes.
And I hadn't seen this one, and the videos just pop up, and I hadn't seen this one woman who I really like for months, and I had forgotten about her. So then I specifically searched her out, saw she was still putting videos. I'm like, why do they not recommend her videos to me? And then she starts talking about how she's been shadow banned and she has no idea why, and she's pissed. And her viewers went way down all of a sudden. This was just yesterday, just coincidentally. And I'm like, why the fuck would they shadow ban her? She just is talking about crypto the same as anyone else. But I don't know. Crypto, I guess, is sort of maybe a industry that the big corporations don't really like because they're all connected to the big financial system or something. I don't know.
Without a doubt. And so this brings into immediately the idea of what is a conspiracy and then what is a conspiracy theory, right? Since you and I, we talk a lot of shit, but then we also like to bring it back to real psychology, real philosophy, real social science to the best that we can. And then when we're talking shit, we openly say, we don't know what the fuck we're saying, so we're going to say some shit, right? But that isn't what causes you to get banned. There's a list of negative keywords, and I forget what they're called on YouTube. And the list has reached, I just watched these guys do experiments where they had channel after channel post within the first 8 seconds all kinds of these keywords to see whether their video would get monetized or not. For some reason, they had a bunch of accounts that were established, and they would just run these videos to see. And so, for example, if you say gay, that within the first 8 seconds, you have a problem and your video will not go through the algorithm. Including if you say, I'm fucking gay, then you're definitely not going to make it through the video because you can't say any curse words.
Well, that's definitely part of our problem because you and I both fucking curse way too much.
Absolutely. And particularly the clips we pick are really the passionate one where we're kind of starting to make sense and get real traction into a concept. And we put that right in the front. And normally it starts with like, oh my fucking God. Or I can't believe this shit. Right? And it's like, well, that's how we talk. And so in our next channel, which I think because we are the violators of these terms of agreement that we never fucking agreed to, and they keep changing the algorithm without informing us exactly of it. You know, I went on to our channel to see exactly when they decided to shadow ban us, or I think we are actually in quarantine. Like they have done, like we are off everyone's feed. Like I talked to some people that subscribed to us a while ago, and they're like, oh man, I wish you guys would post more videos. And I was like, oh really? Yeah, that's funny because just look it up specifically, and you'll see there's been videos this whole time, and they're like, no fucking way. Well, same thing as the woman you're talking about. We're worse than shadow banned. We're ghosted, right? And like, since we are the violators of this unknown terms of contract, I think our new channel should be called The Violators. And we should just go hard. Look, check this shit out. I think it's a funny game, actually, since you and I are doing this we have no care for monetary reasons. Like, we should just go game this fucking system. There's 1,500 keywords these guys have located. 1,500. We'll take those. We'll have to use, I think, Llama Index to attach that to ChatGTP, because we could take the transcript from each episode, put it into ChatGTP, and say, like, replace all 1,500 negative keywords with, like, I love you. and just like, and literally run the episode like that. And I can guarantee, until they get more sophisticated and track actual phrases, you and I will skirt right through, and we'll just have like, we'll just have AI create the most woke titles and descriptions, so that it will. I think this would be hilarious to do that, and then we'll just say the same shit as always. Yeah. Like, you and I can just do this, but we'll just run it through a fucking translator. Yeah. It certainly fits my defiant need to be irreverent.
Yeah, totally. I think it'd be worth telling the story of, like, this Google Bard thing that you did. So Google Bard, I haven't heard people talk about it. It's an AI thing like ChatGPT, but it's Google's version of ChatGPT, basically. And tell your story
and it's live.
Of what you did, what you researched on Google Bard.
It's live, though, because ChatGPT pulls off of a host of knowledge that is not up to date, like today.
Yeah.
Right? So you can't ask it what I asked Google Bard,
right,
where I said, like, hey, Google Bard, which video of Enter the Freud podcast has the most views? And it wrote back, sorry, there is no podcast named Enter the Freud. and I was like, no, sorry, you're wrong. There is no, and I said there's a YouTube channel. That's what I said. I said you're wrong. There is a YouTube channel named Enter the Freud, and it said, I'm sorry, no, there isn't. And then I said, well, is it possible that the YouTube channel Enter the Freud may have been entirely suppressed even from you because of its potential content? And then it fucking said, the YouTube channel Enter the Freud has content, and then it named the types of content in the thing. It fucking narked on itself.
Totally. It was I couldn't believe that, man.
It literally then said, well, it talks about relationships, psychology, and these things which are potentially harmful to viewers.
Yes.
So it is suppressed to protect the viewers. That's what it said.
Yeah, it was shocking that Google's AI thing, first it lied to you twice, even after you disagreed with it, and then it doubled down on its lie. And then you said this other thing, and then it like narked on itself. It admitted it was lying to you, and admitted that like Google/YouTube was suppressing this shit. It was fucking crazy. And you can't help but start to feel a little conspiracy theory-ish, because it's like, why the fuck would YouTube censor you and me? You know, we talk about like psychology and sex and just irrelevant shit that doesn't have any relevance to like corporate profit, you know. And so the fact they censor us, and then they censor in certain ways, you can't help but think, what the fuck? There's some sort of like big brother out there who's wanting to like carefully craft collective human psychology. And it's like, what the fuck?
Without a doubt. And just since we are psychologists and we like to talk about psychology, is this censorship, which of course it is, it goes all the way into like which types of research are going to get funding. Well, you can't fucking study only men. It has to be inclusive. You have to then show the penises to the women. See see if that helps their social anxiety. You're like, well, this is starting to get absurd. Well, it was absurd. That example is so stupid. That example is so stupid. I don't know why I said that. I don't know why I said that shit.
I don't know if maybe you don't remember this because you were in India, but when I was young, like 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, I remember learning about censorship and like book burning. And I remember it kind of was like more liberal left people sort of accused more right wing, especially like Christian right people, of doing the censorship. And the idea was like, oh, there was these books written through the decades where that like Huckleberry Finn or something like that sort of showed, that sort of like challenged a more white supremacist narrative. And like they wanted those books, they wanted Huckleberry Finn banned. Ban that book because we don't want young people reading about how black people are cool. And so that was banned. And so there was this sort of idea that censorship was kind of like a right-wing, conservative, Christian, moral thing trying to prevent artists from expressing their more liberal, progressive, woke thing. That's kind of my sense of what censorship was all through the 20th century. And now, doesn't it seem like it's the opposite? That now censorship is like that the right wing is now wanting individual freedom of voice, and individuals should be able to say whatever they want, and each individual should be allowed to express their opinion, and that's like individualistic freedom of expression. And now the left wing is like, no, it's got to be woke. It's got to be PC. You can't say that you don't like transgender people, otherwise you'll be banned.
Yeah, it does seem like that shift has occurred. And like, it would be really easy to just take a look at YouTube's negative keywords and then just do an assessment of how many of them are left-leaning and how many of them are right. Like, that would be pretty fucking easy analysis to do. But also it would be pointless because I think all of us intuitively can see the direction, and I'm not interested in actually doing a study of this shit. I just want to rant about it for a second and then quickly move on to hijack this shit and then get it to promote stuff that it just 2 seconds ago didn't promote. Mm-hmm. I would love to just do this because it won't be very hard.
That's kind of what you want. You want to beat the system and get it to promote things it wouldn't, just by like substituting the keywords. You sort of think you can beat the censorship algorithm.
I do actually think I can. And like, what kind of a win is that? It's just the game. It to me, I have a very different perspective of this idea of freedom. Right? I think because I grew up in a place where you were absolutely not free. Like, everything about you was controlled by corporal punishment and threats of violence. Right? And so, like, I grew up in that world, and so my understanding of freedom is very intellectual. Like, your mind is free even if you are not.
Right.
I'm just the only one who wants to make the distinction, because it does tie into the idea of like, are these things are we actually censored in this country under the name of moderation and or banning and or protection and whatever we want to call it? That is a real conspiracy.
Yeah.
Right? There's huge powerful forces, and they are actually doing this.
Yeah.
It is not a conspiracy theory. It's real. This is very real.
Yeah.
And that's all.
Yeah.
And I don't have any. I have no more passion for that concept, and that's all.
Okay, so your theory, your violators' theory is that we can say in great detail the shit they don't want us to say, and then all we need to do is substitute the keywords. But the problem is we'd have to say it, then we'd have to get a transcript made of it, submit that transcript to ChatGPT or whatever, substitute the words, and then but then we'd have to like read the transcript then and then put out that video.
No, you do the episode, then post episode you transcribe it, run it through the thing, in post editing, find each phrase, and then because they'll all be in red, and you watch the video as you look at the thing. Whenever red comes
out the fuck and instead put "I love you."
I love you, and or like, oh flub, oh frick,
right?
Oh,
and you just voice over all the edits.
Yeah, with a very simple like text to voice
software.
Yeah, text to voice software.
Yep.
Now I get that. Maybe I think I'll try it. It might be too much work, and then I'll be like, if I'm gonna do this, I'll just make a company and make some money.
Right.
Like if it's too much work, but I think that will work. I do think the algorithm will not be able to detect it. As is like you can't say the word slave. For some reason, that's a very bad word. It's on the it sounds like naughty. The negative keyword list is the not list. NAUT, I think.
Oh.
I'm not certain.
Yeah.
But if it's on that list, you can't say slavery. You have to say people who worked without pay. If you want to say people are gay, I don't know what you say.
Called a homosexual.
People who are you can't say homosexual. You have to say people who are attracted to the same sex or something like that. Which that seems completely preposterous.
Yeah.
The reason why these guys did this whole investigation into finding out that these so-called 1,500 keywords is that gay people were super upset that they couldn't say all of the stuff they wanted to say about what they want to say about being gay or not gay, whatever. But that is my idea. But then again, the violators is a little bit of instigating terminology, so maybe we call it the
very proper gentleman.
The proper gentleman, which whatever, maybe gentleman is going to be banned. So then maybe we just call it those who oppose violation. Certainly.
And then it's like, well, what? They want to control it how and why? And it starts to be like, oh, well, they're trying to control us. And then just last week, you got off on this eugenics thing. It's like, oh, well, maybe they'll start trying to like control who we breed with, you know?
Certainly. But as you go back through history, didn't you point out that it was Copernicus who ended up... what did happen to him? For what was his terrible crime?
Yeah, well, I think... Well, Galileo knew that if he published his findings, he'd be executed. So I think he waited until he was on his deathbed to publish them.
Oh.
And Galileo, Copernicus, and Kepler were the three that their terrible crime was showing mathematically that the sun doesn't revolve around the earth. And showing that, you were going to be killed.
Yeah, well, I suppose today's problem is less terrible. You don't actually die. I guess it's pretty bad if you get canceled from your career that you worked very hard on, and then you don't have the flexibility to then be like, oh, you guys are so weird, you canceled my career as an academic or some kind of a specialist.
Yeah, that's really bad.
Or some CEO.
This crypto chick I'm talking about, her main source of money is from her YouTube channel. And then so YouTube just suddenly turn it off, like that fucks her up, you know?
Oh, yeah. I suppose that's a harsh reality that we live in. And I see that then it does cause, under the illusion, And this just comes with, like, it wouldn't be a big deal if we were in China or North Korea and you're like, oh yeah, this crypto chick got banned. You'd just be like, yeah, well, she's lucky they didn't fucking throw her in a hole and and they killed her, right? Like in that in a lot of really censored countries, that is what happens to you. But in this country, we assume that you are free to say and behave in ways, particularly around morality, religion, and there's these protected windows that we are allowed to move freely historically.
Yeah.
Because we are not in a time when Galileo and Copernicus can say these things and then get executed. We have left the pre-modern era. And as we made it through the Enlightenment period, we embrace Enlightenment values. Well, we used to, until this more recent postmodern situation has emerged, which Ken Wilber was always warning against. He's like, oh, these postmodern guys. He was one of the first alarm bell ringers of this postmodern problem of flattened hierarchy. And he was always onto this idea of like, no, we are headed towards, as he described it, a universal consciousness. Like, you can't flatten the hierarchy to Trump level state of perception of the world. What happens when our field goes so far as to like the confidentiality of the therapy room itself is no longer trusted, because who knows what could be going on in there?
Yeah,
right. And so you must have a microphone that then is attached to the various algorithm to track, to make sure that the two of you are not in any way doing a conspiracy. And okay, that's a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
Right? But it's not that far off.
No, especially because now it's like, if insurance is paying, they'll like audit your records and look at what you were talking about. And if you weren't talking about what they wanted you to talk about, they won't pay for it. It's fucking already kind of happening.
That is true. Absolutely.